How might Australia's economy be strengthened? Complementary microeconomic reforms are required if Australian businesses are to become more productive, reduce their cost structures, and foster innovation. This is essential to raising future living standards and making Australian businesses more globally competitive. One of the world's most prosperous economies is that of Australia. There are only 4 or 5 other locations on Earth, all of which are far smaller countries that can compare to the degree of personal wealth enjoyed by their residents. It has also generally experienced quite steady economic output, continuing its record of avoiding a recession for over 3 decades. All of that is fantastic, yet according to the majority of economic logic, Australia's economy ought to be a complete bust. Australia continues despite having made many of the same mistakes as many other nations today, facing hyperinflation, widespread unemployment, national bankruptcy, and in some cases, near total societal failure. Economists could learn a lot about seemingly little differences that led to drastically different results by studying how Australia avoided disaster while following the same policies as nations that fared much worse. Why, therefore, does ISIT think Australia's economy should fail? How has it managed to escape all of its issues? Is it long-term sustainable luck? Lastly, what can other nations take away from Australia's distinctive approach to economic management? Ever wonder where your donation could make the biggest difference? That very concern was raised by a group of contributors in 2007. But instead of getting useful information or cutesy pictures from organizations, they were met with misleading narratives. Because of their experience, they founded GiveWell, an organization dedicated to offering transparent, in-depth studies on the top donating possibilities they have come across. After more than 15 years of investigation, GiveWell exclusively funds a select handful of the most impactful initiatives they have identified. GiveWorld has received over 100,000 donations totaling over $1 billion. Meticulous data indicates that their contributions will enhance the lives of millions of people and save over 150,000 lives. GiveWell aims to empower as many contributors as possible to choose high-impact donating with knowledge. On their website, you can access all of their studies and suggestions. Australia's small business climate started to improve in the second half of 2020, coinciding with the country's wider recovery from the catastrophic economic disruption brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic. Early in the pandemic, small businesses found it harder to obtain financing from lenders. However, a number of governmental initiatives were put in place to assist in the granting of credit. Lending to small firms hasn't changed all that much either. In an unpredictable environment, businesses have been hesitant to take on more debt, but many have also been able to adopt a variety of interim measures that have supported revenues or permitted payment delays. The business sector has suffered as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. The World Wide Web did not exist, and the Soviet Union did not exist the previous time Australia had a recession. Kuwait had just been freed by an American-led force, and nearly half of the world's population had not yet been born. Australia escaped the 1997 Asian financial crisis unharmed, in contrast to most of its region. It weathered the resource bust, as well as the global financial crisis, in contrast to other affluent nations that exported commodities. No other wealthy nation has ever been able to expand as consistently for as long. Australia has the most prosperous economy in the world, at least by that metric. Over the course of the next 12 months, economic growth will slow down, warning that Australians are working longer hours to keep up with the country's skyrocketing cost of living, and that homebuyers are suffering the biggest cut to their salaries in the industrialized world. The International Monetary Fund reduced its prediction for the Australian economy on Tuesday, predicting a meager 1.8% growth in 2023 and a meager 1.2% growth in 2024, which is posing a political challenge to the Albanese government. Australians were significantly extending their working hours, according to separate data by the Productivity Commission, which was lowering overall productivity throughout the economy. Acting Commission Chair Alex Robson stated that Australians had increased their working hours to the highest level ever outside of the disruption to work patterns caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, even in the face of extremely low unemployment rates. The IMF downgraded its projections for global growth marginally in its latest World Economic Outlook. It predicts that the world GDP will grow by 3% this year and 2.9% in 2024, well below the long-term average. In Australia, the anticipated slowdown in growth will be accompanied by a predicted decline in inflation, with estimates of 5.8% in 2023 and 4% in 2024. The Federal Treasury and the Reserve Bank share the same inflation projections as the IMF, although the IMF's growth prediction is less optimistic. Upon considering population growth, which has reached 2.2%, the IMF projections indicate that Australia's per capita recession is still going strong. The Reserve Bank's strong monetary policy tightening, which increased interest rates from 0.1% at the beginning of May of last year to 4.1% at this point, is a major contributing reason to the downturn. By the end of the previous year, Australians' mortgage repayments had taken up the biggest portion of their household income of any industrialized nation, according to IMF analysis. Interest rates have increased much further since then. Mortgage repayments that are high and likely to go higher continue to worry consumers. Although it is still quite low, the Westpac Melbourne Institute monthly measure of sentiment increased in October. According to Matthew Hassan, senior economist at Westpac, the measure remains consistent with continued declines in per capita spending. According to IMF estimates, mortgage payments currently account for about 16% of household income. In contrast, even though official interest rates in the US are higher than in Australia, American consumers still pay lenders less than 10% of their income. According to Pierre-Olivier Gorenches, the IMF's economic counselor, the world economy is still getting over the COVID-19 pandemic, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and the problem caused by rising living expenses. With low unemployment in many nations, it has demonstrated extraordinary economic resilience. This had raised real wages but created a wage price spiral. According to Gorenches, the risks were still skewed to the negative, with a decline in China's real estate market posing the greatest threat. Volatility in commodity prices, which would affect countries like Australia that rely significantly on resource exports, was another growing source of concern. According to Treasurer Jim Chalmers, the report validated the worldwide challenges impacting the Australian economy. Finding innovative ways to boost productivity growth, which has fallen in practically every nation since shortly before the 2008 global financial crisis, remains a top priority for the IMF. According to the Productivity Commission, Australia's productivity decreased by 2% in the 3 months ending at the end of June, affecting 15 out of the 19 industries it tracked. Productivity fell 7.6% overall in the arts and leisure sector, despite a 9.3% increase in hours worked and a 0.9% increase in production. The mining industry accounted for 1/3 of the productivity decline, as lower output of iron ore, oil, and gas was caused by unfavorable weather and scheduled maintenance. Australia has a well-established international reputation as a wealthy, sparsely populated nation that is vulnerable to natural calamities and whose economy mostly depends on foreign investment and agriculture. During the first century of European settlement, when wool exports were the main industry, this statement was largely accurate. The primary importance of farming and grazing was not contested, despite the rise in importance of wheat, cattle, lamb, dairy products, and a variety of irrigated crops. But the expansion of services and manufacturing, particularly the remarkable advances in resource exploitation following World War II, destroyed this perception. There was no continuity breach in another sense. Australia's reliance on foreign investment and susceptibility to global markets make it challenging for the country to shed its historical status as a minor or ancillary participant in an integrated global economy. Other facets of this deeply ingrained dependent status became apparent when manufacturing started to decline in the final decades of the 20th century. The economies of Australia have generally been dominated by foreign interests, initially by those of the United Kingdom, then by those of the United States and Japan, and more recently by large multinational businesses. However, the governments of Australia have typically demonstrated a clear willingness to intervene in the economy. However, Australia's economy has two unique and very recent aspects. The first has been a reluctant recognition of the Asia-Pacific region's critical economic and strategic importance, as well as a growing understanding of the opportunities that can be found there. Second, Australia's corporate, financial, political, and bureaucratic cultures have steadfastly embraced a more rationalist economic philosophy that seemed to accept a comprehensive globalization and deregulation of the nation's economy as inevitable, despite some discomfiture in certain quarters. That's all for today. If you liked this video, please give us a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon to receive notifications. Also, express your valuable thoughts in the comments section below. Until then, bye. Also, spend some time watching other videos on the channel.